welcome to another episode of Inner Mastery, where we learn about the secrets within. And this is a special episode. It is a book club edition, so we are in a new earth. We're reading the last part of chapter 4, and this conversation is really about how the ego animates on a personal level, and that then moves to the collective level, and how if we want to shift the world that we are in, right, get rid of fear, get rid of all of the anger, get rid of the fighting, the wars, it really starts with ourselves. And once we can create more consciousness, more awareness within, that then also reflects outward, right? As within, so without. And so in this chapter, we get into just how the ego is animating in your own life, how you can shift and change it at the group level, and what we can all do together. So if you are new to my channel, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to this on audio, please make sure you give this a 5-star review, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Hey there, Danielle Matthews here. I'm coming to you live from Florida. Today is Monday, so it is book club day, and we are in the midst of reading A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And this book, we are doing basically like 10 pages at a time because it's pretty deep stuff. And we're just finishing out chapter 4, which is role-playing the many faces of the ego. And if you're joining me live, please let me know when you get here. If you're catching the replay, let me know that you're catching the replay. If you've got questions, comments, put them in the comment section. It's me behind here, always answering them. So I would love to see them. And today was really interesting. This section of the book, I should say, was really interesting because it was talking about how the ego can take different forms. It can enhance itself in our work, in illness, in the collective. And I think probably the most fascinating part of this conversation was just how, on a collective level, this works with nations, with groups, and how fears and anxieties and this need to be versed something else in order to prove yourself. It's fascinating. So, hi Tina. Oops, sorry, Bodie. I just stepped on the dog. Good to see you guys. Let me know when you're arriving in. We're gonna just dive right in. We are currently we started at pathological forms of ego, so page 118, and we took it all the way through to the end of the chapter. We'll start on chapter 5, the pain body, this next week. But hello, Charlotte. Good morning. Good day to you as well. And all right, so the ego, okay, is pathological. And if you don't understand what I mean, pathological meaning like literally when it gets expressed in certain ways, it can become like a disease. So like a pathological liar, put a 1 in the chat if you've ever met a pathological liar. The ego, right, can feel like insufficient. It doesn't feel like it's enough. And so it will literally create stories in order to define itself, right? Because the ego is nothing other than the contents of the container. It defines itself by those things. And it needs to have more and more and more. Yeah, Charlotte, you've met one. I have too. It's like kind of fascinating to watch. You're just like, wow. And it's like something else has taken over in their mind, because it has. It quite literally has. Like the ego has gotten to a pathological state because it's run amok so far. It's the same with like schizophrenia. He called it in the book, paranoia. But schizophrenia is the story that the mind starts to present itself to make sense of the persistent fear. Remember, the ego, right, it's operating on the binary, seek pleasure and avoid pain. And it is fearful of a lot. And so that underlying fear, that underlying unknown, that underlying like, why am I here and what's going on and all of those things, the ego, if it gets out of hand, literally to the point where it becomes pathological, your mind will start to create a story to make sense of the fear that it's constantly hearing. Pretty freaking wild. So if you've ever come across, like I've actually had 2 people in my world that had these schizophrenic episodes where they had just complete paranoia, where they thought everything and everyone was after them. Like the whole world was conspiring against them. And it was this fear, right? This incredible fear that also needs to emphasize the other, right? Because the ego only defines itself, right, as when it's right and others are wrong, right? It's separate from other things. And so this otherness also increases. Bodhi, inside. Oh, my dog is currently chasing a fly. It is so nice down here in Florida. I got a vest and everything on because we just have the windows and the doors open, and Yeah, Bodhi just ran out the door after a fly, so we'll have to maybe come get him. Oh, he shut himself out. Sorry, guys. Hang on. He just shut the door. Bodhi, get inside. Inside. Okay. Well, that was exciting. So let's look at page 119. He says, the stronger the ego in you, the more likely it is that in your perception, other people are the main source of your problems in life. And so let's just everybody audit yourselves real quick. All right. If I were to say, what issues are you having in your life right now? What are the biggest problems in your life? And you were to start making a list, are other people at the top of that list? Put a 1 if yes, put a 2 if no. I say it is very common, if we're being honest with ourselves, the human condition, right? It's very easy to point. Well, it's this person's fault. They didn't call me back. They didn't do this. They said they were going to, but they didn't. Blah, 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 blah. Right? There's a million ways that we start to blame other people, and we believe it is our perception that it's because of them. Well, they did a certain thing, and so now I feel a certain way. And so it's very easy to point the finger and to say, there we go, we got some honest people. All right? It's very easy to point the finger and say, it's them. Right? There, I was fine until they came in and said these things. All right, and just wait until Thanksgiving, right? You're going to be with family and people that sometimes don't hold the same belief systems as you, and you're going to get triggered, and you're going to say, it's their fault, it's my aunt's fault, my cousin's fault, my uncle, he's nuts, whatever. All right, it's not them. What I want to tell you is that is your ego making an other out of this person and starting to take things personally, where he says the stronger the ego is in you, the more likely your perception is that other people are the problem. And the truth of the matter is that, well, they're not your problem. But it's interesting because the collective ego, so if you think about it, right, we're on an individual level, we're dealing with this, and we know the saying, right, as within, so without, as above, so below. And what can happen is that this ego that manifests in our own individual life also manifests on a group level in the consciousness of humanity, tribalism, nations. There's an us versus them. It's been this way since the beginning of time. This is just how it looks. It's how it works and what it looks like. And we try to assert ourselves. There's a collective paranoia. I think on page 120 he was getting into this. He says, the more unconscious individuals, groups, or nations are, the more likely it is that egoic pathology will assume the form of physical violence. This is where war stems from. We get to the point that we literally feel that we are being threatened, like on a level of our actual existence. And so a nation or a tribe or a group will act in violence. So if the collective, okay, so let's go back to the individual level. If you yourself, your ego is out of hand, and then you get a whole bunch of people whose egos have taken over, all of a sudden it's going to feel justifiable that you need to defend yourself against this other. And physical violence is one of the most, it's just the easiest thing to move to, this unconscious behavior. And so this manifests on a group level, on a nation level. Think about how and where wars were started and are currently started and going on in this world. It is a manifestation of the collective ego, right? Why do we have arguments? This is probably the biggest key of this entire chapter. So listen and listen closely. Why do you get in an argument with other people? Why? To the point where there's like passion coming from you, right? And people passionately believe in wars and what's going on. Like, what is that? This is really important to understand, because if you can understand this, you can literally relieve yourself from it to the point that you're never going to get in arguments again. And you're going to see there's really no point to them. But this was all on page 120. I want to explain this. He says, each person becomes so identified. Tina says, because I'm right. I get in arguments because I'm right and they're wrong. Exactly. Right? It's the ego. It's making an other of them. So each person becomes so identified with their thought that make up their opinions, okay, that those thoughts harden into mental positions which are invested with a sense of self. So we take the thought patterns that are moving through us, and they create opinions, and those things, they become so he calls them mental positions. I think it's a good way to put it. They become like solidified. It's like, yeah, this is my belief. This is what I believe. This is right. Okay? In other words, the identity and thought merge. You become your thoughts. You become your opinions. And once this happens, when I defend my opinions or my thoughts, I feel and act as if I were defending my very self. This is the key. This is the crux, people. Unconsciously, right? You're not consciously aware of this, but unconsciously, I feel and act as if I were fighting for survival, and so my emotions will reflect this unconscious belief. You literally, it's a survival mechanism. You believe that this argument, this thought pattern, this belief, this opinion that you have, you need to get the other to understand it, and if they don't, you will fight back and defend it as if you're defending your own life. It is fascinating, just coming out of election season, right? Politics, that's a very easy way for people to get very passionate, right? The topic of abortion probably is one of the ones that solidifies people into this, like, no, this is me. And it's an opinion that I would defend passionately, as if defending my life. That's what he's talking about, okay? They become turbulent. I am upset, angry, defensive, or aggressive. I need to win at all costs, lest I become annihilated. That's the illusion playing out. That you literally believe that you are your thoughts and this opinion, and that you have to get it conveyed, because if that somehow goes somewhere, you go somewhere. The ego doesn't know that the mind and mental positions have nothing to do with who you are, because the ego is unobserved mind itself. Remember this. So this is where we go all wrong. On an individual level, so I'm helping you out right before Thanksgiving dinner happens. On an individual level, this is where we go wrong. And it's also on a collective level where we go wrong. Where all of a sudden we have made an other. Well, they're wrong and I'm right. You know, there's, I saw a picture this weekend a photographer had taken of a lioness holding her cub. And at one angle, it literally looked like she was eating the cub, because you could only see the body hanging out of her mouth. Okay? But then the photographer took it from another angle, and from that angle, you could see that she was just actually holding like the fur on the top of his neck, and the head was out on the other side of the mouth and the body was here. But it's like, if you had someone looking at the first photo, they would have believed, because they believed their thoughts and their opinion, that the lioness was eating the baby. Whereas the other person would have said, no, like she's carrying her baby. And they both would have had this argument, right? And then they both were right, because with the inputs that they had, the thoughts that they had, were accurate, but they defend it with their life. And this is the problem. We start to get defensive over our opinions and our thoughts because we believe that we are them. You are not your thoughts, okay? That's probably, if we broke down this book into one statement, you are not your thoughts. You are the thing witnessing them. And so when you become so identified with them that now you're going out and getting combative because you're defending them, you're defending your sense of self, give me a freaking break. You're involved in the illusion, and you are never going to find peace if you operate in life that way. Okay, high five me, put a 5 in the chat if you're with me. Does this make sense? And then you watch this happen on a collective level, and it's like, whoa. Because on a collective level, all of a sudden, nations are attacking other nations. They are evil, right? What was the whole thing that we've been told? Like, it's like a child's book with Russia versus the United States. He's evil, we're good. I am sorry, there is complexity here that we're not talking about. Understand, that's just a collective ego. It's wild. Once you start to peel back and see it in your own life, you start to see it on the collective level, and you stop getting so upset by everything. and we'll talk about, so what can I do about this, right? I don't want to live in a world that's like run by egos, because it's not going to get anywhere. This is where we're going with this. But I want to just touch on, he talked about other ways that, because for us personally, in order to fix the collective, it starts with us individually. Because if we can individually master this, then the collective will shift. That's just what will inevitably happen. But right now, our own personal egos are so out of whack, it's making the collective so crazy. The more you can work on yourself, right? be the change you want to be in the world, right? It's not do the change, be it. Be it. Your being has to change. You need to be your being, not your mind. All right, there's so much to that phrase. So, okay, he talks about how your ego can animate in work, how it can animate in illness, like all of these different ways. And so I want to just kind of do a gut check on everybody with this. So, oh, there was one comment, sorry, just to go back real quick. I thought it was beautiful. This comment that Zen says, in Zen, they say, don't seek the truth, just cease to cherish opinions. I was like, oh, that's good. That's like, boom, that's right on target. If you cease to cherish your opinion, then you will realize, hey, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my opinions, I am the thing witnessing them. And when you let go of identifying so closely with them, you'll actually find your true self. I thought that was just beautifully said. So let me ask you, when do you feel most free of your ego? When do you feel free from thought, I should say? Just put it in the chat. When do you feel most free from thought? I'll say just before I got on here, I was sitting with Bodhi. We were sitting in the sunshine. I was just petting him. And it was just like pure presence. You know, there were no thoughts in my mind. And then eventually it was like, oh, you need to go do book club. And sure enough, I had to get on. But when do you feel this? You know, I feel it in meditation. When I'm dancing. Nice. Yep. Beautiful. Who is that? Spooks Lotus. First name, who is that? I don't know. It's so funny on Instagram, right? I just see y'all's handles. So dancing, yes. Skiing, yeah, I used to feel it when I was snowboarding all the time. It's just like you're so one. You have to be in the present moment. When you're dancing, when you're skiing, when you're doing these creative expressions. Hey, Patricia. When you're doing these creative expressions, you have to be. Okay, you absolutely have to be. Other times, maybe when you're out in nature, a lot of times that will bring you into the present moment. When you're petting your dog, it'll bring you into the present moment. All of those things. Okay, they're good times. So do you feel a lack of ego in your work? All right, hiking in nature. Yeah, I hear you. Do you feel it in your work? There are some people, I don't know if Jackson, if you're still listening. Okay, dancing for you too, Jackson. I don't know if you find this, Jackson, when you're working on somebody, but people that have a gift with, you know, Jackson, he and I just met and I was talking to him about like the work he does. He works a lot with dancers and he does a lot of like physical work on clients, and he brings in a lot of different modalities as he's working on the body. And it can feel sometimes when you're that present. I know when I'm giving a yoga nidra session or a yoga therapy session, I'm so fully present, there is no ego. It's like I'm just like this, I'm in flow with the divine. There's no thoughts. And I just know exactly what to do and everything's going properly. You know, I know exactly where to look. I know where the energy's moving. I know what's happening. And it's because there's no ego. Yeah, Jackson, you feel it too. Yeah. There's just no ego involved when you are so good. He says, you know, he points out, he says, teachers, artists, nurses, doctors, scientists, social workers, waitresses, hairdressers, business owners, salespeople, when they perform their work admirably without any self-seeking, fully responding to whatever the moment requires of them, they are in flow. They have no ego. It's a spiritual practice. They are one with what they do, one with the now, one with the people or the task that they serve. You're in flow. The influence such people have upon others goes far beyond the function that they perform. They bring about a lessening of the ego in everyone who comes into contact with them. Isn't that interesting? So maybe you find it in your work, and all of you thinking about, you know, if you don't have this in your own work, learning to move into this space, it becomes like when you're a clear channel for the divine. I don't have it in front of me, but it's like you're reflecting light. The light that you are is literally reflecting and coming through you because you don't have, it's kind of like, I think I've shared before, like if you had this beautiful like crystal at the bottom of the lake that's just reflecting the light, but then all this muck comes on top of the lake. So now it's reflecting the muck. Okay, that's like your being and your thoughts, okay? When the thoughts are clear, when the lake is clear, your being shines through. The light of who you are shines through, and it's magnetic, and you're in flow, and people are like, wow, and it also brings out the light in other people, okay? Your candle will light another. But when the thoughts come in, when the ego comes in, you lose complete access to that. You know, my teacher, one of my spiritual teachers, we was talking yesterday, and he was like, wow, like he was like surprised at what was coming through his mouth, and he literally stopped and he said, it's amazing when I'm in this state speaking to you all, my mind is so quiet, the masters are speaking to me and it's coming straight through me. And someone asked, are the masters talking to you all the time? And he just started laughing. He said, no, the moment I start thinking, they leave. Because there's no room for them, right? When the thoughts come in, it's so murky that now we're reflecting our own thoughts. We're not reflecting the being, the light, the divine. Making sense? Okay, so that's where we're trying to go. Anybody who is one with what he or she is doing is building the new earth. That's what Eckhart Tolle says. And you know, there's a lot of places where, you know, your workplace can draw your ego out because there's competition, because there's this us versus them. You're feeling like, well, I didn't get recognized and I should have been recognized. And the truth of the matter is, many people are their own worst enemy. Because the ego starts to flare up and these dynamics start to come out in their workplace. And he says, you know, whenever an obstacle or difficulty arises in work, when things don't go according to plan or expectation, when other people or circumstances are not helpful or cooperative, instead of immediately becoming one with the new situation and responding to the requirements of the present moment, if your ego is animated, they react against the situation and so separate themselves from it. There's a me that is personally offended by it and resentful, and huge energy gets burned up, right? This is where we can go off in the workplace. Hey, Kevin, good to see you. All right, so the ego doesn't know that the more you include others, the more smoothly things will flow and go for yourself. All right, the more easily things will come to you. He also, I want to touch on, because I thought it was helpful, and then we'll talk about the collective ego, ego and illness. So you might find, right, some people, when they get sick, the ego becomes stronger, and sometimes it gets weaker. And, you know, I believe truly that every obstacle, every challenge in front of us is a moment. The opportunity in the obstacle is to crack through the ego and to find your true self. And sickness sometimes comes on and is an opportunity, which some people take and some people don't. So, you know, illness, how it can strengthen you. Just kind of any guesses here, like how could illness strengthen the ego or weaken the ego? Does anyone have thoughts on this? If you kind of think through, like when you're sick. He says, you know, it will strengthen the ego if you start to complain, if you have self-pity, if you resent the fact that you have said disease or illness, if you make an identity from it, oh, I have cancer, and then it becomes an identity, that's your ego animating, not just cancer's moving through right now. Right? It's different. Okay? You get attention. Exactly, Tina. Oh, I'm the victim. Oh, woe is me. Oh, I need help. That's ego. And if you allow it to animate itself when you're sick, guess what? Oh, poor me. Exactly. That's going to strengthen the ego. So how will it weaken? Well, a lot of times, have you noticed that when people get sick, they become a little bit more gentle? A little bit kinder, a little bit softer, like their heart is a little more open. It's like they all of a sudden feel their humanity because their body's not doing what it usually does. Now they don't have the energy for the mind because their body is taking their life force energy. And so they don't even have any to go up into the mind to carry out all these thoughts and craziness, right? When your body has low energy and it's failing, you really don't have enough life force left to fuel the ego. So it can weaken it. If you don't release your ego during sickness, you will stay sick longer. Right? Think about it. You only have so much life force, right? I don't have it in front of me now, but like a jar of pennies or whatever, right? And every penny is like you're spending your money on your life force energy. When you're sick, a lot of money needs to go into the body, right? Typically, we waste a lot of our money in the mind, in the ego. When you're sick, you can't. But if you try to keep your ego in control and all of the stuff and the thoughts, you're going to be spending money in the mind and your body's not going to be getting that life force energy. And so it's going to take you longer to repair and recover. Make sense? So just illness is an opportunity. and it can strengthen or it can weaken your ego, and use it how you see that you need to. So I would suggest helping it to weaken your ego. That's what happened for me. I mean, it was a complete ego death when I had my traumatic brain injury and lost my health. It was like I pushed for like a year. It wasn't immediate. Like for a year, I was trying to get back. I was expending all of my energy in my mind trying to get back. And then finally it was like, oh, we're not going back. Like we need to accept this moment as it is. And like my ego had an actual death. And, beauty came through. Absolute other part of me that I'd never accessed. Okay. The last bit I want to talk about, the collective ego. We were talking about this at the beginning, but in order to get to the collective ego shift, we have to work through ourselves. So work on it at work, work on it in your personal life, work on it if there's illness, just work on you, please. But the collective ego, sometimes you will identify with a group or with a political party or with a team, and it's like you think that you've dropped your ego and you're just so supportive of the collective, when really you've just dropped the personal ego for the ego of the Republican Party or the Democratic Party or whatever, the Philadelphia Eagles or the Baltimore Ravens, or I don't care, whatever. And there's some identity out there, that you kind of come to. And so it might feel that your ego has lessened, but the truth is it can be a little tricky. You could have just lost it to the group. As he's talking about, a new earth, and part of the reason that I do these book clubs, right, is I see these dynamics happening. And I want to live in a world where everyone's bright, beautiful light is shining, not their egos. I don't like the muck. I want the purity. And so I do book club, and I have the Inner Management Mastery program and the community, right, who we all just met this weekend. It was a beautiful discussion, because I want to create a group where we can talk about these things, like we shine light on the ego. And so he pointed out, and I thought it was really nice, he says, well, hang on, as this new consciousness emerges and people are going to want to come together in a group to talk about these things, are they then going to animate the ego? Right? Because it's in a collective. And he says, no. If you have enough people that are consciously aware, that come together as a group, yes, perhaps each individual hasn't fully mastered their own ego, but the intention is there and they understand it, there's going to be enough collective conscious awareness in the group that it will not get taken over by the ego, because one another will keep each other in check. Okay? And it's amazing when you're in a group like that. I'm fortunate that I live around a community that is like that at the Amrit Yoga Institute, at this ashram, where there's enough conscious awareness in everyone, we're able to identify our own egos and go, oops, sorry. Let me go evaluate that. That's me, that's not you. And so real shifts can happen here when people come into this space, because the collective energy is there. All right. And that's what I also, that's my intention with the work that I do, and why I have the Inner Mastery community. Why? I want to create the space where egos can go away, where we can start to get in touch with our true essence, our true selves, because that's the world I want to live in, quite frankly. And he said, look, dissolving the human ego by bringing it into the light of awareness, this will be one of the main purposes of these types of groups, whether they be enlightened businesses, charitable organizations, schools, or communities that people are living and gathering in together. That's where we are moving. So do what you can to be involved with that. If you're here for book club, you're involved with it, right? Share this video with somebody. Tag somebody in it. Like, get awareness out there about what we are talking about, because yes, it starts with you, but if you can help another change, and then you have people together where you can talk about these things, it makes a massive, massive difference. All right. And he kind of finished this chapter talking about how, the ego really clings to life. We talked about how it's clinging to its thoughts and opinions, but it also believes that when you die, it dies. And that's the end of everything. And we know that's not true, right? We're the one witnessing it all. So when this life ends, the witness is still there. Your true self is still there. Consciousness is still there. But, the mind doesn't know that. And so the ego creates this illusion. On page 128, he said, we could even say that the notion, my life, is the original delusion of separateness. It's the source of the ego, believing that it is separate from the witness. The ego becomes separate, and it goes, this is my life, my opinion, my thoughts, my everything, makes an I out of it. That's the problem. That's the original sin, if you will. That's where we missed the mark. That's where we got off track. because that separateness is a delusion. It is an illusion. You're not separate. He says, there is no such thing as my life because I don't even have a life. I am life. I am life. I and life are one. You can't lose something that you don't have. So consciousness is always there, right? It's the ocean and the wave. Yes, the wave comes into form and it feels like its own thing, but it eventually dissolves back into the ocean. You are the ocean and the ocean is the wave. All right, that's you. That's how it works. So don't get too worried about death because it's not the end of everything. Right? It's absolutely not. So I hope that this was beneficial. Again, tag a friend, share it with a friend, join for book club. We do it every single Monday, 12 to 12:30 Eastern time. And we are on Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth, Chapter 5 next week. He talks about the pain body. It starts on page 129 in my book, and it goes... I think we'll go to the top of page 139, right where it says carrying the past. We're going to stop right there. Okay, so I'll put it in the Telegram chat. If you're not in the Telegram group, just message me. I can get you in there, and we'll carry the conversations in there. So for those of you that are in the U.S., I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I will see you all next week on Monday. And yeah, beautiful kind of thoughts to start the week with, and just watch for the tricks of the ego, my friends. All right, I'll see you all later.